Hello, and welcome to the Lund University International podcast. On the show, you'll hear from current students, alumni, researchers, professors, and many more special guests as we explore what it's really like to live, study, and work at Lund University, a world top 100 university. My name is Erik Kvist, and I am an international coordinator working with migration and contracts for the Office of External Relations. In today's episode, we're joined by two international students who have chosen to live in Copenhagen while studying at Lund University. From navigating the daily commute across the border to comparing the unique cultures of Denmark and Sweden, we'll dive into their experiences and discover what makes living in Copenhagen and studying at Lund University such a special combination. We'll talk about favorite destinations, life on both sides of the Öresund Bridge, and how they stay connected to student life at Lund. It's important to say that the possibility to live in Copenhagen and study at Lund University is only available to EU citizens, as non-EU students need to apply for a residence permit to live in Sweden, which means that they must live in Sweden and are not permitted to live in Denmark. However, these students can, of course, travel freely to Copenhagen, and many do so regularly. So, with us, we have Sophie and Daria.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi there. Great to have you with us here at the podcast. So can you give us your name, where you come from, your country, and what you're studying?
My name is Daria. I'm from a town in northern Italy, and I study the Master of Public Health. It's really fun to be on the other side of a podcast. I listen to so many.
Yeah? Cool.
Yeah, and my name is Sophie, and I'm originally from Florida in the US, but I also have family in the Netherlands, so I have a Dutch passport, which allows me to live in Copenhagen, and I'm also studying a master's in public health.
Great. So, the most obvious question, what made you choose to live in Copenhagen while studying at Lund University?
Well, I was moving with my partner, so in any case, they weren't able to speak either Swedish or Danish. So Copenhagen is, of course, a bigger city. So we were hoping that they would be able to find a job more easily. And then, although I'm Italian, I used to live in Sydney before living in Copenhagen. So I was also a little bit worried about moving to Malmö because it was a bit of a smaller center. So in terms of all the cultural activities that would be going on in Copenhagen, I was like, I wanted the big city life.
All right, cool. So did you move with your partner from
Sydney?
From Sydney
to Copenhagen.
To Copenhagen directly.
Exactly.
Cool. Wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Big move.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I would also seem like Sydney is a big city, and so is Copenhagen. Yeah, I moved to Copenhagen, I chose to live there because when I did my undergrad, I did my exchange at the University of Copenhagen. So when I was accepted to Lund University, I always had plans to kind of make my way back to Copenhagen at one point to live there. I did spend my first year in Lund at Malmö, and then in November I moved to Copenhagen. I had already been working a job in Copenhagen as a waitress starting in June of 2024. So moving to Copenhagen was also a work incentive for me to be closer to work, but also I just really kind of had an obsession with it since 2022. So
Cool, great. I actually live in Copenhagen myself currently, and I am a so-called love migrant. I moved to Copenhagen for love, quite simply. Great. So, and it's such a cool city. Like I really love it. It seems like everyone says it. Everyone loves Copenhagen. Like the tourists love Copenhagen. People who live in Copenhagen love Copenhagen. I feel like people are generally, the Danes are quite like patriotic about their city, I think, and proud of it. What are some of your favorite aspects of living there?
I just really love the fact that it's just so anonymous in a way. So in the sense that you can meet a lot of different people, go to a lot of different bars, but at the same time, if you go to the store, nobody's gonna recognize you. I really like that kind of.
Yeah.
And I think it's just really, I guess also just having a really multicultural space where you can do whatever you want to do because it's big enough. I think that's always great. Yeah.
It is very international.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's also kind of the freedom of it because there's no issue going around in English because, of course, everyone is very much used to also just speaking English all the time. So I think also I never had Danish people minding that I was always speaking English to them.
Yeah.
So I think it's also people there probably are also very much used to just people speaking English and just internationals being there.
Exactly. That's obviously another aspect of living there and living abroad in general? Like, how does it work with language? So you mostly get around by English, I suppose. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would say the same. I mean, similar to Lund, they're both very international places, except that, Copenhagen is a bigger city. My favorite aspects would have to be, like, the parks. I know there's parks here in Lund as well, but, like, I mean, you can stand anywhere in Copenhagen for the most part, and within 600 to 800 meters, there's gonna be a park.
Yeah.
Like, there will be a really nice park, and then it doesn't even feel like you're in a city anymore. I also like how there's like all the little. So Copenhagen is broken up into like kind of districts: Frederiksberg, Nørrebro, Christianshavn, like all different areas, Osterbro, and they all have the unique touch to it. So you always find a new street. I always take a walk, and I'm like, I've lived here now this long, or I've known about the city this long, and I just found this new street. So that's what I really like about it.
That is super nice. I agree. It feels like you can keep stumbling upon new, interesting, nice things in Copenhagen, and it has so much to offer. Even though we talk of it as a bigger city, and it is. I mean, in Scandinavian terms, but for a major European capital or so, it's actually not that big. Sure. But it still has so much to offer. You mentioned that you like the parks. Do you have a favorite one?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Frederiksberg Gardens.
Yeah.
It's like kind of an escape in there with all the lakes and then the different paths that you can take around it. Yeah, it's quite large as well.
Wonderful. I actually live right by a park myself. I live by Legravsparken.
Oh, that's really nice. Isn't that is it one by Valby or?
No, not really by Valby. It's on Amal.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a small little park, but it's really, really cute. And it's nice to have these little green breathing areas when you live in the city. So do you have any top recommendations in the city?
I really like the museums there. In any case, I think the museums are great. So the Muslim, for example, collection, the David collection, I believe it's called, about Muslim history. That's also free entrance as well.
That's great.
Yeah, and I just really like the buildings as well. To go on a very long walk in Copenhagen, although the city is of course very small, you just have a day off and you can see so much. So I think walking around is great. Yeah.
Yeah, I would also say another museum would probably be the Glyptotek.
Oh yeah, that's fantastic.
It's so beautiful in there. I think it's free on like the last Wednesday.
Exactly. Yeah, I think most, or at least some museums are free of charge the last Wednesday of the month each time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just describe Glyptotek a little bit for our listeners who?
Yeah. It's like Greek and Roman history and architecture as well. And then you kind of go in, and the first thing you see are like this kind of like kind of greenhouse in the middle of it, and it's really nice. And it's just really nice to walk through, to be honest, and look at all the history. I think there's also some from Egyptian history as well.
Yeah, they have some mummies.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that's pretty
some genuine mummies. I think it's such a cool mix of things at Glyptoteket. You have like the ancient Egyptian things. You have the Impressionists from France. There are some Van Gogh paintings and Monet, I think, and the sculptures are just fantastic. Yeah, so that's a really top recommendation for me too. Okay, so now a big topic to discuss, the commute. How does this work for you? What's the typical travel time? How do you find the commute in general?
For me, the travel time is 1 hour 10 door to door. So because we are the Faculty of Medicine, which is in Malmö. So we go to the clinical research center there. So we just stop in Triangen most of the time. And depending on your station in Copenhagen, it might change a little bit. But the train ride is about 40 minutes. So it's really completely fine. And the trains, I would say, are the best trains I've ever experienced.
Really?
I lived in the Netherlands. I lived in Australia. I think they're so nice.
Wow.
I don't know. I don't think this is controversial to say at all. I just think the trains are great. I love the fact that it's silence. There's silence carriages. And then, I don't know. I really enjoy it.
The trains are nice. For the most part, there's not really delays.
Exactly. Yeah, I think a lot of people had mentioned to me, there's going to be delays. But I'm Italian. Maybe, you know, my standard of reference is very different. Okay. But like, I really only experienced a couple of times cancellations. So I'm very happy with the service.
Okay, you're lucky. I feel like I've seen quite a few delays, I gotta say. And for me, it's a little bit tough.
I feel like it depends as well, like kind of which station, like, or how far you have to go. I go from Copenhagen Central when I like was in Malmö for studies. I go from Copenhagen Central to Triangen in Malmö, and for me it's an hour door to door. But I did commute from Copenhagen to Lund for quite a few months as well last year. So I did the full thing. So if you're interested in living in Lund, which is like a very student town instead of Malmö, it's not too bad. It's like an extra 15 minutes, I would say, 15, 20 minutes, depending where you live in Lund. And like I was even working as a waitress in Copenhagen, and you know, I would commute at like 1 a.m. in the morning all the way from Copenhagen back to Lund, and honestly, I kept working, so it didn't deter me from work. So like it wasn't awful, but
young energy.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I was thinking the same.
But it definitely is possible, and it's not too bad.
Do you both get on the train directly in, like, close to where you live in Copenhagen, or do you need to first take the metro or bike to a station and then jump on?
Bike.
Or how,
I
you
cycle.
bike first.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
I need to take the metro first, like 5 stops to get on the train, which is fine. But I think as soon as you have also like 2 means of transportation that need to gel with each other, that makes it a little bit more vulnerable, kind of. And it also makes the ticket prices higher. Yeah. You pay like an additional little thing.
Not for us though, because we're students. So
so is the metro included for you?
Yeah, it's every public transportation within the capital region, and then it's very cheap as well. I think it links around the youth card.
The youth card on the DSP app. For Scantraffic, like that app, I think you have to add the metro. There's an option to add.
Yeah.
But you still can get a student ticket.
Yeah. I have to add the metro, which adds a little bit of money to my card, and I gotta say I don't have the student discount, obviously, because I am working, and I am an adult. Like I can't claim these youth discounts anymore. But I gotta say that I find the commuter card very expensive.
It is
very expensive.
Very expensive. I think as a student, like if Copenhagen has so many opportunities, and you want to live there, find an internship there, or work there while you're studying at Lund University, I think the ticket is not too bad, depending. It also depends on a lot of other things. But but otherwise, like, I think it's really up to the person to be like, do I want to make this investment for this?
Maybe we should say that so Danes generally, the salaries are higher in Denmark, generally, which
do you know. And there's holiday pay, which I was really surprised about. Like, coming from the US, I also was working as a waitress there, and like maybe I pay like $5 an hour plus tips,
right?
And you don't get, like, if you're sick or you go on vacation, you don't get paid. And they, like, in Denmark, even if you work part-time, they require that you take vacation, and they pay you to go on vacation.
Right. Yeah.
And I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
So definitely a higher salary. Definitely a lot of social support, kind of like a social safety net. But at the same time, there's a higher cost of living. So
was it easy to find a job in Copenhagen whilst living in Sweden at first, if you were in Lund?
Yeah, so I was in Lund, and it was the summertime, so I had no more classes, and I tried to find a job here in Sweden, but there was kind of a limitation in terms of the service industry for English-speaking jobs, and Lund is also a very small town, so there's not a lot of job opportunities. So my thought was Copenhagen, because I had also thought about moving there in the future anyways. And I just, I remembered a restaurant that I had eaten there like 2 years ago when I was on exchange. I was like, oh, I really like that restaurant. So I went on their website and sent them an email, and that's how I got that job.
Oh, great.
But most people in Denmark use the website Job Index. But I have actually found that if you are international in Copenhagen, living in Copenhagen, looking for a job, like part-time at cafe, it's better just to walk in and ask, hey, are you hiring? They're very good with that.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
So salaries are generally higher on the Danish side compared to the Swedish side, which also then has a bearing on the cost of living. I would say in general that things are a little bit more pricey in Denmark. But
absolutely. Yeah.
So it's great. Also, the labor market works quite well in Denmark. Like they have very low unemployment, particularly in the Copenhagen region. So if you're a little bit if you're a little bit low on cash as a student and you come here and you have the opportunity to take an extra job, and you can, do the commute to Copenhagen, why not? We should maybe in this context say that this is something that is completely like available to EU citizens because of the right of free movement and these things, but it might be in order to work in Copenhagen, otherwise you might need a work permit. Some other differences between Denmark and Sweden. Is there anything that comes to your mind off the top of your mind?
For me, I think it was the differences in the prices. I think it was completely different. I also brought my partner just yesterday to Malmö, and then they went into a shop, and it was really just like completely different prices, of course, but it makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
I would say the same. Other than the prices, obviously, the rent is a bit higher in Copenhagen. I would say the groceries are about the same. But eating out and getting coffee, that's also very expensive in Copenhagen. But otherwise, some other differences, I would say, like, I think in general, like the Scandinavian cultures, both in Denmark and Sweden, there's not like a lot of differences. So it's not like you're going to have a massive culture shock when you go on the bridge and you take the train over to Denmark and then you go back to Sweden each time. So you kind of can stay relaxed and very familiar with a new environment, which is really important also as an international student, that you feel comfortable. I think, honestly, maybe the drinking culture is a bit stronger in Denmark. So don't be surprised if you go there on a Friday night and there's a bunch of drunk people on the metro.
Or on a Wednesday night.
Wednesday night, I'll be honest. Yeah.
And this means something because I think the Swedes are also, the Swedes can drink too.
Yeah, of course.
But the Danes take their beer seriously.
Yeah, and I guess also in general, just with health, just also because we're students of public health, but the Swedes are much healthier.
Okay, interesting.
In terms of smoking, in terms of drinking, in terms of health habits.
I see a lot of students smoking here, like cigarettes. So I don't.
And I think Copenhagen, at least, especially now in the winter times, just because it's February, so I think a lot of people go out to smoke, but you see in the streets, I feel.
Like I think they probably are here. I'm not so sure, but like in Copenhagen, there's bars you can go and you smoke inside.
Exactly.
Stuff like this.
Oh, I didn't know this. This is legal.
Banned.
Wow.
I was also so surprised to see that. It was earlier this fall. My boyfriend and I, we were at a place and everyone was smoking, and I was like, how is this legal? But they have some sort of restriction, like if it has to do with size, if the bar or whatever is like, if it can hold maximum, I don't know if it's like 40 people or something like that. If it's a small place, then they're allowed to smoke.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's
indoors.
That's crazy.
That was quite the shock. Yeah. I haven't seen that since like 2006 here. I think that we banned smoking.
That's, to be honest, quite late, I feel.
It's very common, like basic bar, and then quite a few of like the more hole-in-the-wall pubs around Copenhagen.
Oh,
there you're smoking in there.
Yeah. All right. But so if we talk about, for example, celebrating holidays, are there differences between the Danes and Swedes?
Was it Christmas is like 2 or 3 days in Denmark? I'm not so sure for Sweden. I think midsummer is a lot bigger in Sweden than it is in Denmark. In Denmark, there's also, I think in June or May, like the Independence Day-ish. And then, I think I was there in 2022 when they had that, and I saw some Danish flags around, but otherwise it's like not really like a huge thing. But I will say, having working in a restaurant, if there's a birthday or a graduation, you always put like a Danish flag on the table.
Yes.
And stuff. I don't know if they do that in Sweden, but I think that's a really cute little tradition.
Yeah. No, I would say that this is a difference. I would say that they are generally a little bit more patriotic that way. Like the flag is a big deal in Denmark, and you use the flag for a bunch of different types of celebrations and these things. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They also have Sankt Hans.
Yeah, that's what I meant, I think, with the... Isn't that similar to Midsummer?
Yes, exactly. It is similar to Midsummer, but... And I must also say that I haven't like properly celebrated Sankt Hans myself. But I see it as a bit of a mix between our Valborg, like Walpurgis night, and Midsummer, because I believe that they light bonfires and these things. So it's a bit of a mix.
Yes, something like this. And right now we also have Festivaven. It's like kind of like, not Halloween. I don't want to compare it to the US Halloween, but it's in February, and I think it's just that period of time where everyone goes on ski vacation, but it's also, there is this, back in, I guess, what my landlady describes me back in the day, you would go and you would kind of have a piñata for this holiday, and there would be a cat inside of it, and you would hit it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, but I don't know if you do that. Yeah,
wow.
Way back.
Yeah,
in the day.
I think this is.
But now I think it's just candy.
Yeah,
I am quite sure.
But they make these Festivavenboller, which you can go to the bakeries now in Copenhagen in February, and there's all these pastries, kind of similar to in February in Sweden we had this Semla bun.
Yeah.
So similar things, but different pastries.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So many pastries to try. That's also nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Speaking of pastries, who's got the better coffee and cafes?
Well, probably Copenhagen.
I mean, Lund does a really great job with the coffee. I'm really picky with my coffee. I'm obsessed, so I really am.
Yeah.
Like Love Coffee here is really good, and Coffee Break has really nice coffee as well. I think Love Coffees are really good. They have really good coffee beans. But in Copenhagen, I think there's just like more of them. Where it's like here, it's like, okay, espresso house, and I'm like, no, not espresso house.
Okay.
Like you can find such cute little local cafes in Copenhagen that has like way better coffee than Espresso House, and Espresso House is also hugely overpriced,
and a huge company as well. So it's just go to tinier little cutesy
little ones.
Cafes, yeah.
For the listeners who don't know, Espresso House, you could maybe say that it's like the Swedish Starbucks in a way. It's a very big chain of cafes. But I gotta say, I quite like Espresso House. I think that like the quality of the stuff is fine. I can tell by your faces that you don't necessarily agree. But Espresso House was actually founded in Lund. Yeah, it's a Lund company originally. But of course, so I just need to like say that for the Lund pride. No, but obviously, Copenhagen cafes are really, really nice, and it's a much bigger city. It's a capital, so they have good stuff for sure. But I would also say that Lund has a strong coffee game.
It does, and then the pastries are really good here as well, because you have like, was it Mumars? I don't know how to say it. Grandma's Bakery.
Yeah, Mumars Bakery. Yeah,
they have like, I mean, really fresh pastries. So Lund as well. I don't know about Malmö. I live there as well, and I couldn't really find really cute, fun little cafes.
There's a few, but they're hard to find.
They're really hard to find.
Yeah.
It's more concentrated in Lund.
For sure.
I would say. I think, but Lund in general, everything is.
It's very concentrated. Yeah.
Exactly. The city center is concentrated and quite small. In Malmö, it's a little bit more spread out. But okay, so Copenhagen wins slightly on the cafes and the coffee, but you do also pay more.
Oh yeah,
right?
Much more. Yeah, for sure.
You would agree with that.
I would definitely agree, unless you can really find like a hole in the wall. Like I found a hole in the wall cafe called Lippa. It's kind of in Frederiksberg, Norbro area, and a cappuccino was 38 Danish kroner.
Wow,
which is really, but like that's usually it's like 45 or 55.
Yeah.
So the Danish currency is a bit stronger than the Swedish, so I don't know what that is in Swedish krona, but 38 Danish krona for a cappuccino is really well priced for Copenhagen. So I think it really just, you kind of have to, hunt for good prices and try not to go for the bigger chains that have higher prices.
Yeah, I think it depends also on the location. I really like, if I don't have to go to Malmö, I really like studying at the Black Diamond, the big library. Which is such a nice spot. But then the only issue is that it's so isolated, and then I think the coffee there costs €7. So I think it costs around 49 or sort.
Yeah,
So that's
quite a lot.
that is a lot for a coffee, I think. And I'm Italian, so
Yeah, of course.
again, it's
of
an
course.
issue. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
49 Danish crowns, I would say, is
70.
75
Yeah.
Swedish.
Yeah.
So because I think this is recorded on the 17th of February, 2025. And I believe the currency is at 1 Danish crown is like 1.5 Swedish. So talking about living costs and salaries and these things, the recent developments in terms of currency is also really, they're important in that context. Just a few years ago, maybe the Danish crown was at 1.3 or something, 1.35, and now it's been up. It's been at 1.6 Swedish crowns. So that I mean, obviously that's like a 30% difference.
It's a huge difference. I noticed it a lot because I lived in Copenhagen in 2022, and it was not like that. It was like
exactly
because I was using like US, so from the US currency exchange rate to Danish krone, and it wasn't too bad. It was still obviously expensive, and then we went back to Denmark, and I was like, wait, that's how much it is in US dollars now. So I think you have to really keep in mind the year, the day, the month, the currency, like what's happening.
Yeah.
Because that said, though, like I learned this last week, apparently the Danish crown is tied to the euro.
Yes.
So that was just complete new knowledge to me. So in any case, whether you're always changing euros to Danish, which I tend to do, then there's not really a difference. But there is a difference with the Swedish.
Okay.
Exactly. I believe that the Danish government has made a decision that €1, I believe, should be 7.5 Danish crowns, like at all times, essentially.
Exactly. I think it's because the Danes wanted to join the Eurozone, but they didn't really, something on the sort, and then they decided to stick with the crown.
This is another thing. They're really clever. The Danes are clever with this because they get the best parts of being in the EU, and then all the kind of tricky parts, they're like, nah, opting out, which I see particularly in my field because I'm a lawyer. So Denmark has a lot of weird exceptions, but I do believe that it's honestly a very well-governed country. They are consistently in like the top 3 when it comes to how happy they are and just general, like, their economy's doing great. Living, quality of life is generally very, very high in Denmark. The Danish government can pay me later for an endorsement. Okay, so I have one last question when it comes to sort of your how it came to be that you lived in Copenhagen. How was your experience of finding housing?
For me, I think it was particularly challenging because I was in Australia, so the time zone was 10 hours forward.
Yeah.
So for me, it was primarily, I think, Skyping and calling at 2 a.m., so it wasn't great.
Right.
But luckily, I just found an apartment in Örebro relatively easily, and I just accepted it, and then I sent in the deposit. And then, everything went pretty smoothly. But then I also realized afterwards, after arriving, how lucky I had been, just because there is a massive shortage of studios or small apartments, especially in Örebro or in the central area. Yeah. So I think I just got very lucky.
Did you find it on a website?
Yes, I don't remember exactly the website. But
is it like Bulik?
Exactly. Bulik. Yeah.
So I would 100% recommend the Facebook groups are very sketchy. They're very scammy. I mean, it is possible, but I don't recommend it. It is a little bit of investment. In Bullock Hub, you had to pay a subscription. I think it's like 300 something Danish krone a month.
Yeah.
And I paid that, but for a different website called roommate.dk. And then I only paid the subscription for 1 month because I was like, and you can cancel it, because I wasn't looking for a studio apartment. I was looking for a room in a shared apartment so I could have some roommates. So I bought that subscription, and I just got really lucky, and I found a nice place with really nice roommates and on that website. But the thing is, because it's so competitive in Copenhagen, if you kind of already know, like, oh, I want to live in Copenhagen, look 6 months in advance. Like, I looked in June, July, and I moved November 1st. Yeah. So that you have to kind of look in advance for sure. And I think in Sweden it's quite, especially in Lund, student housing is easy to kind of find also you have to look in advance, but not that much in advance. I know people who look a year in advance in Copenhagen.
Wow.
I think it's good that you mentioned it because I think, I moved in September and then I remember finding my house even in March, just because you have to, I think, leave your house with 3 months of in advance, so that then you have the time to actually. So if you're looking for a house, at least 3 months beforehand.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah.
Super. All right. Is there anything else you would like to add to this discussion?
I think it's fun to hear the Swedes complain about the Danes and the Danes about the Swedes. It's a joy every time and be like, okay, I'll be there in 40 minutes.
The Swedish language is a bit easier to learn than the Danish language, but I plan to learn Danish. And once you learn Danish, you can kind of understand Swedish. So if you're looking to stay longer.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Lund University International Podcast. If you're interested in learning more about Lund University, you can go to our website, lunduniversity.lu.se. You can also follow us on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and X. And you can connect with our amazing student ambassadors on Unibuddy. Don't forget to subscribe, and we look forward to bringing you a new episode very soon.